to another episode of Never Mind the Dam Busters. Really excited about this episode. More coming up very, very soon. Jane, what have you been up to?
I've been finishing off Invisible Campaign, but most of all, I've been preparing for this episode and getting really, really excited about talking about my favourite ever aircraft, the Handley Page Halifax. Now, most of you will know, those of you who know me well, that my interest in the Halifax comes from the fact that my great uncle's crew flew Halifaxes for 10 Squadron, and I wrote a book about the Halifax crew and about 10 squadrons of work between 43 and 44. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the Halifax is the unsung hero of Bomber Command. It did so much of the graft and never got any of the glory, and it's basically the workhorse of the strategic bombing campaign. There was something like 6,178 Halifaxes built, and they flew over 75,000 sorties from sort of late 40, early 41, right up until the very end of the war. But as well as doing strategic bombing, they were used extensively to lay sea mines, my favourite subject, and they were also utilised by Coastal Command. They were used to drop SOE agents into occupied Europe, and some were even adapted with a special hatch and chute for this purpose. It also flew operations to drop supplies to the Polish Home Army during the Warsaw Uprising in 44. So at just about every point in every air battle, from the early raids on the Tirpitz, right through the Battle of the Ruhr, the Battle of the Berlin, the Normandy campaign, to towing gliders for Operation Market Garden, the Halifax was in the thick of it. It even took part in Operation Manor at the end of the war to drop supplies to the Dutch people, and the Berlin airlift afterwards as well.
Incredible. So let's get back to basics and talk about the evolution of the Halifax. The Air Ministry wanted 2 new heavy bombers. It was anticipated that whoever had a better strategic or long-range bomber would win any coming war. Various plans were submitted, but the 2 designs which were accepted, what we would eventually become the Short Stirling and the Handley Page Halifax. Orders went in January 1938, and the first prototype had its maiden test flight on the 25th of October 1939. 35 Squadron was specially reformed to introduce a new bomber in November 1940, followed by 76 Squadron in spring 1941. Mass production techniques were introduced, and gradually both squadrons were supplied with the brand new Halifax B Mark I Series 1. The original Mark I's had a ceiling of 18,000 feet, a range of 1,700 miles, and a crew of 6. There was no upper gun turret at this point. It was armed with 2 machine guns in the front turret and 4 in the rear. The Mark I, that double-fronted look, the Series 2 had gun positions either side of the fuselage, but only 25 of these were built. The Series 3 had the new, more powerful Merlin XX engines and an increased fuel capacity. And this eventually evolved into the B Mark II series, which became the standard operational Halifax. The Mark II had 4 Brownings in the tail, 4 in the upper gun turret, and a single in the nose. So it was all looking good for Bomber Command. It had a brand new 4-engine heavy bomber, which was much better than anything the Germans had, except for one thing.
Yep, unfortunately, the Handley Page Halifax was a death trap. So the design's constantly being tinkered with, and as a result, the aircraft got heavier and heavier as more equipment and gadgets is added on. The newly fitted upper gun turrets caused a lot of drag, as did the flame damping exhaust system, which was also visible to enemy night fighters. The engines just weren't powerful enough for what it was that the aircraft was expected to do, really. There were also problems with the tail design, which meant that the aircraft was likely to stall while trying to take evasive action. So soon the Halifax began to develop a reputation for being a dangerous aircraft to fly in, shoddily built and technically unreliable, and there were very heavy losses, not just in combat, but also due to accidents and training as well. So the aircraft was put through a stringent programme of adjustment and testing, resulting in the Halifax B Mark II Series 1. The front turret disappeared altogether and was replaced with a sort of streamlined nose fairing. Now, this new model was half a tonne lighter than its predecessors, and the Halifax B Mark II Series 1 was first flown on the 15th of August 1942 and rolled out to squadrons in 4 Group Bomber Command that autumn. But despite the considerable effort and significant expense, it was still basically a pile of junk, and heavy losses continued. Back to the drawing board.
The Air Ministry decided to carry out tests on the aircraft that had been flying operationally to try to establish where the problems lay. There was a load of issues: poor construction and maintenance, poor takeoff performance, slightest mistake by a pilot could be fatal, rarely reach its operational ceiling of 15,000 feet, basically a sitting duck. Sudden evasive action often resulted in total loss of control. Test flights were arranged to investigate the problems, but the test crew were all killed on their first flight. When the wreckage was examined, they found that part of the rudder had been torn off, which meant the aircraft was uncontrollable. The designers and test engineers eventually worked out the problem was with the shape of the tail fins. The triangular-shaped originals were redesigned into a square D shape, which solved the stalling problem immediately. Now we have the B Mark II Series 1A, which began to be rolled out into squadrons in June 1943. It's basically a completely different aircraft, but it still wasn't really good enough.
And what did Arthur Harris think about it? Well, he called it a perpetual embarrassment. And he blamed it for the large proportion of Bomber Command losses, even though those figures didn't really stack up. Now, Harris hated the Halifax so much that he even lobbied to get production scrapped entirely. He was only ever interested in the Lancaster. But the Air Ministry told him in no uncertain terms to get on with it, basically, and make use of whatever resources he had. But there's no doubt that in the early part of 1944, the situation was really, really dire. Losses in late 43 and early 44, particularly during the Battle of Berlin, was so high that Harris ordered the complete withdrawal of Halifaxes from bombing operations over Germany altogether, unless there was a maximum effort raid, when it was a case of all hands and all aircraft to the pumps. In the meantime, the Halifax squadrons were focused on mine-laying operations in preparation for the forthcoming invasion, or attacks on transportation targets in France. Now, I've done a lot of research on 10 Squadron over this period, typical Halifax bomber squadron based at RAF Melbourne in Yorkshire, which was part of 4 Group Bomber Command. 10 Squadron lost 4 Halifaxes in one night in January 1944. Now, bear in mind, a squadron would usually have, 22 operational aircraft, some of which would probably be in maintenance. So to lose maybe 20% of your operational force in one night is absolutely devastating. So by 20th of February 1944, the squadron had lost 10 aircraft and 70 men in the space of a month, which was unfortunately typical of other squadrons in the group at that time. After a disastrous raid on Leipzig on the 19th of February, in which Bomber Command lost 78 aircraft, the Halifax Mark IIs were withdrawn completely from operations over Germany. 34 of the 255 Halifaxes sent out that night were lost, which is an appalling attrition rate really of over 13%. But by this time, the Mark III was already being introduced and delivered to squadrons. 10 Squadron took delivery of their first Mark III on the 7th of March 1944. And the Mark III was an absolute game changer.
Now, everyone raves about the famous Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, and why not? It powers the Spitfire, it powers the Hurricane, the Mosquito, the Lancaster. But the Halifax and the Merlin were not a match made in heaven. For the Mark III Halifax, the Merlin inline engines were replaced by Bristol Hercules radial engines. They were also fitted slightly lower on the wing, along with other refinements. The result is a massively improved performance. Bomb load of 13,000 pounds, a top speed of 282 miles an hour, a ceiling of 24,000 feet, maximum range of 2,350 miles. More Mark IIIs were produced than any other Mark, and it was eventually used by 41 different squadrons, the majority in 4 Group and the Royal Canadian Air Force squadrons of 6 Group.
But what was it actually like to fly in a Mark III Halifax? Well, why don't we ask someone who knows the Halifax inside out? We're absolutely delighted to welcome to the podcast Tom Davidson, flight engineer with 466 Squadron. Hello, Tom. Thank you for joining us.
Hello there. Hello.
Lovely to have you with us. So, Tom, we're going to be asking you lots of questions today about your time with 466 Squadron and about the Halifax in particular. But before we go into the aircraft details, can you tell us a little bit about your background, Tom, and how you came to enlist in the RAF?
Well, yes, I was an apprentice engineer. I was 16, just 3 days before 40K, and I was tasked as being in a reserved occupation, which meant I could never be called up to serve in any of the armed forces, nor could I volunteer for them. And I felt very strongly at the time because I was aware of the atrocities, not the scale of them. I just didn't want anything like that to my country, my loved ones. But I couldn't do anything about it until I did get the opportunity at the time at Dunkirk when Mr. Churchill appealed to everybody males in 16 to 65 to join the old LDV, Local Defence Volunteers, became Home Guard Dance Army. I joined that when I was 16 and used a bayonet handling late, and I was in that till all winter, but I was working in Hendon. And then in 1942, because of the heavy losses suffered, the government decreed that boys and men in reserved occupations could volunteer to train as what they call PNB course, Pilot Navigator Bomber. So I volunteered for that, went away for a week doing medicals and intelligence. I was accepted into the RAF, was given my service number, and joined the RAF Volunteer Reserve and sent on indefinite leave. And at the same time, the flying bomber was introduced, and they required 2 pilots. But again, because of the heavy losses, they couldn't maintain that. So they created a new aircrew traded flight engineer who would be an actual fact a pilot's right-hand man. So they received a letter from the airman that you want to be prepared to train as a flight engineer, which I did immediately. Did some more tests and was accepted, and that's how I came to be in the RAF.
Where did you do your training, Tom?
Well, it had 3 weeks at Lord's Cricket Grounds, getting uniforms, kitted out, jobs. Did 6 weeks straight bash in ITW, and then I trained at St Athens School of Technical Training in Wales. Passed out as a sergeant flight engineer, was given 6 days leave, and then sent to a heavy conversion unit to train as a flight engineer on Halifax bombers with experienced crews and that. When I was deemed to be a qualified flight engineer, I was then posted to Lancaster Malvers with about 30 or 40 flight engineers to join the crew. And joining the crew in the RAF was a most haphazard choice of men. You just got bodies together, and it worked, incredibly worked. There's very few occasions where crews didn't care. Anyway, I met this day with my pilot. He came over to me, walked over to me, and it was like one of Mills and Bourne's romances. I saw him standing in the doorway. I thought, I hope he comes to me. And this is a gospel truth. He walked straight over, and he says, hello. He said, I'm Pat Gillis, Australia. You could tell that. And he said, have you got a pilot? I said, no. He said, would you like to be my engineer? And I said, yes. So that was how the romance started with my pilot. I mean, it was great. I joined a wonderful crew.
How old was Pat then?
It was 3 weeks. How old Pat was? We're both born in August 1923, so you can work that one out. We're both 20, actually. The average age of the crew was 20. We started flying and that. And we went back to the airfield, the 6058 Con unit. And when we're qualified, we're posted to 466 Squadron, an Australian squadron in Fogo. And it was fantastic. I remember the first night I went to Sergeant's Mess, I saw 3 familiar faces. There was a old school pal and work colleague, a chap that I had joined up with at St Transford, and Eddie Warren, who slept next to me at St Athens. None of them made it. They were all killed. And then we did some more training on the 400 bomber, and then when we were deemed to be ready for operations, that was it.
Yeah.
And then what happened was, each day we all met in our department, the flight engineers department, and then about 10 o'clock the phone would ring, and you would hope to hear the flight engineer either be nothing on the day tonight. You'd shout with joy. You had another 24 hours to live.
Wow.
But invariably, it was operations on daytime or nighttime, so many aircraft. And then,
So is this early
if you were
44
on the,
we're talking about, Tom? Is this sort of late 43, early
no, it's
44?
it's about September 44.
Right, okay. Right, thank you. Okay.
If I'm going too fast or anything,
No, that's
just
fine.
tell me
No,
to
not at all.
You just
stop
keep
it,
on going. We're loving it. Yeah, keep on going.
And my Geordie accent,
It's all right. I'll translate for James. That's all right.
Thank you. Yeah.
And what would happen was the call would come through so many aircraft to the air night. And then that's when for me, that's when sort of fear would set in. But then once you had your meals, you had your last meal, you got it out, and you were picked up. And once I put the key in the aircraft door, the fear left me till we got to the target area, because you had to concentrate every second you're in the plane for the survival, not only yourself, but your fellow crewmen who were fantastic. We had a fantastic crew, great pilot, strong, but wonderful pilot,
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about the crew? Who made up the crew?
About the what?
About the crew. Can you tell us a little bit about who did what and such like?
About the raid.
About the crew you were with.
Oh, about the crew. Sorry, I'm hard of hearing. I'm 100 anymore.
You're doing very well.
It was a wonderful crew. But it was a wonderful crew. As I say, our average age was 20. The two gunners were 19. And we just had so much great trust and confidence in each other. I mean, our lives depended on us being the best at our job. And I was lucky I got such a crew. Pat was a fantastic skipper as well as a pilot. We had regular meetings, anything going wrong, anything like that, And it was it really was a fantastic crew to be with.
What was What was the layout on board the Halifax, Tom? And what were conditions like on board? Because it's a very cramped environment, isn't it? Everyone's right on top of each other.
No, I've been on a Lancaster, and compared to Lancaster, it was very easy for the crew to move around in. And also, if we had to escape when we were taking evasive action or ready prepared to go around an aircraft, it was very easy to access the escape positions, It was a very strong, sturdy aircraft. In fact, when we're taking evasive action from fighters or searchlights, Pat used to sort of run like a fighter plane. When you imagine when we took corkscrew action, down about 500 feet, it wasn't pleasant for the crew, but he didn't care as long as he got away from the enemy.
Yeah.
But it's very strong and sturdy, the aircraft itself.
Was there any sort of particular? Was there any particular sort of quirks or problems that you would encounter on the Halifax? And can you tell us a little bit more about what the flight engineer is doing during the course of a flight? What would your normal sort of jobs be during the course of a flight?
My normal course was, I used to after all the systems of switching over the fuel tanks, the hydraulics and all that. And then I had to do fuel calculation every 20 minutes. I got the airspeed and everything from the navigator, and there was a formula to calculate the fuel consumption, so we switched over. And it came in very handy one day when we lost a tank load of petrol, but, I've lost the tank load. I forget the reason now, but I had calculated it was a long journey, but you might keep into the journey. I think it was Magdeburg, I think. And I calculated we didn't have sufficient fuel to reach the English coast. So we referred that to Pat. And I said, can the navigator find an aircraft near the north of France we could make for? And the Aussies, all young, wanted to land near Brighton where their base was. But I said to Pat, if you can't reach the English coast, I'm going to jump out. Well, anyway, we made for an RAF station, Touvencourt in North France. It wasn't fully operational, but we made for that. And just as we touched down, engines cut out, it leveled out. We had to be towed off the runway, you know.
Wow.
That was one incident. But I mean, I don't mind telling you, I suffered from fear and shock. It was scary, but it was a job we felt we had to do. We didn't think about that. You just sort of, on the trip, I would be up in the dome looking out for our own aircraft, so avoid collisions and also enemy aircraft, you know. But
What was life like on the base, on the airfield, day to day?
well, you just had to get on with that life, you know. You don't know how long you're going to live. I mean, my own brother was killed. He was a flight engineer. He's on Halifax's. And you saw the different way your comrades were killed each night, and you didn't dwell on it. I've never dwelt on it in 80 years, but it's there. I remember as it happened yesterday. But the fear left the political target area, and my first thought was the worst ever. It was called a Squadron historian, but we had some. It talked about the sturdiness of the aircraft. There's a bizarre thing happened to us coming into land one day. I still can't believe it happened if we're land. That we were the third ones to come into land, and they had operated a new lighting system. Hadn't been tried out. The first two aircraft just made the end of the aircraft and formed flying control, but they didn't have time. We were the third one down. Path touched down short of the runway. Now, what I'm going to tell you is bizarre, and I cannot believe it happened. But I thought we'd gone through some trees because it was backing on the side of the aircraft. But what had actually happened was the railway ran near the aircraft had actually touched down on the ground. Now, how it didn't tip up, I don't know. And we opened up the engines, took off again, and as I say, I thought we'd gone through trees, but it was actually the telegraph wires.
Oh,
It
great.
ripped the starboard side of the aircraft. In fact, our bomber had a cut in from the air, and he was missing for 4 operations, right? I was spare board. But how Pat got up to telegraph wires, but just shows the sturdiness of the Halifax, you know. I'm not allowed to tell the tale today.
Exactly. Did you fly on any Lancasters as well at any point, Tom?
How dare you? How dare you ask such a
I
question?
have to ask. Yeah. I just wanted to see if you could compare the two, which one's best.
I
Obviously, we
tolerate
know.
the Lancasters,
Yeah.
but that's all.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
So, also out of interest, how was the relationship with ground crew? Was that?
Oh, we had a fantastic relationship. Pat and I used to go out and do the pre-flight tests and that, but we used to visit them during the day. And of course, whoever saw the night wolves used to treat them to treats and that. I remember the sergeant unit was in Australia. There were a few Geordies in the ground crew, but we had a fantastic relationship with them. They were great.
So did you used to socialise?
No, in pubs, yes. Actually, at the end of our tour, we have decided to treat them with tenderness on a deal, but the emotion was so big, you felt drained. We didn't feel like it. And we apologised to them. We gave them money for them to, have a good night out. But we just couldn't do it. I don't know, it was the reaction that set in, But that's the way it was.
Just so sort of exhausted and mentally drained by the whole thing.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Yeah, gosh, that's incredible. Can you mentioned your brother there earlier, Tom. Can you tell us a little bit more about your brother, if you don't mind?
Yes, he was on, he was older than me. He was on 419 Canadian Squadron and a flight engineer. And I came home from Square Boston before winter's enough. And I remember it was the 19th of November, about 8 o'clock. And my mother had just received a telegram about 6 saying he was missing. It was an awful mixed leave, but it encouraged Mary's mother to encourage Mary and I to get married. We'd been courting 4 years. So one good thing came out of it, but it was mixed emotions. And I always remember I had a 26-hour journey to St. Athens. Got married 6 o'clock at night and wet, coffee night. Got a belly to go to the billy with. And I've checked on my bed and went down in the steam. And the next morning, because they always give us the opportunity to leave the RAF because of the dangers all the time. They told us the casualty rate, and they asked for people to step forward if they didn't want to go on training. And I think that for about 15 seconds I was tempted. There were one or two step forward, but I didn't. I stayed. I put got it. But the brother, yes, it was the 18th, 19th of 1943, and they never found the remains till November 47, but they're buried in Rheinberg War Cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What raid was that? Do you know? Was it a one on Berlin when he was killed, or
it was Mannheim?
Oh, Mannheim.
Mannheim.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like your mum never really came to terms with that, did she?
No, and what was more, I didn't find out a month later. She received on her wedding morning. She received a telegram that he was miserably killed.
Oh gosh!
But they didn't tell me months after, you know.
Yeah, that's unbearable, isn't it? Absolutely unbearable. But so many other families went through the same thing.
Well, how did they keep the Nazis at all costs? Yeah. We had to.
Oh no! Yeah, you're dead right. Why do you think the Halifax always gets passed over, Tom? Why do you think people always just talk about the Lancaster and never the Halifax?
Probably snobbery, Jane. I don't know. I don't know. You know, have you got a Rolls Royce or a Morris Minor?
Yeah.
You know, it's nice to talk about having a Rolls Royce. I don't know. They were a good aircraft. I will give them that, but not as good as the Halifax.
What was the best thing about Halifax?
It was the way Patterson manoeuvred. You know, it was sturdy and solid. We just all loved it. Loved the aircraft, you know.
So you felt safe in it?
Very reliable.
Yeah, you always felt safe in the Halifax. Oh, well, as safe as you could in the circumstances.
When we were over England, we felt safe. We didn't feel safe over Germany.
Yeah.
In fact, my first trip. Will I tell you about my first raid?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
It was Squadron. It was a daylight. I think it was chemical plant. And we were in a billet with the crew. See, Charlie I think it was a second or third last door. They knew each other, some from school, way back in us. And they said, stay alongside us, you'll be all right. And we flew along. We had our last meal with him, and I sat with Peter Jack, the engineer, the last meal. And we set off and we flew over all the way, and they were ahead of us on the starboard side. And we're about 40 miles from the target. I saw this big black box in the sky. What on earth's that? It turned out to be a box barrage, where every now and again Jerry would pick a certain height and throw everything up into that area. And I thought, well, we'll fly around that. But you didn't. You had to stick your route. And then the aircraft started going down. And then as we got over the target, or towards it, I see Charlie got hit and it started smoke and burn. I saw two parachutes open. The third one who dug out, we must have took into burst of flak or something, because I just saw it torso going past.
God.
And the next thing I knew was I'm sitting on the oxygen bottles. I had been sick with fear, shock, whatever, and the wireless operator was calling towards me. I switched on. I said, Pat, what's the matter with Ned? He says, Tom, are you all right? I've been trying to contact you for 5 minutes. I'm wishing to say, he said, is this port in it all right? And I said, no, I said, spread it would be here. In fact, when we got back, there was a hole in the port wing, the size of the front door. How it missed all the controls, and I never know. Anyway, went on and dropped. Then to get back to see Charlie, just after that, it burst into flames and blew up. There was only one survivor, the pipe engineer, Peter Jack. The four of them landed and were killed by Jerry. That was war. It was terrifying. I had nightmares that night, but so the rest of the crew I found out later. Well, I knew we had to do it, and we had another 29 to do, which is 36 as it happened. But
how did you ended up doing the extra 6, Tom?
Well, we nearly fell out with Pat. We're walking to the crew buses tonight. He said, by the way, they had asked, because of bad weather, they weren't getting the crews through the squadron. So the CEO had asked, I think it was a top 4, top 6, if the most up, if they would do volunteer for an extra 6. And Pratt said he should have volunteered, but you don't have to come with me if you don't want to, or wouldn't even. So they spoke in their best Aussie lingo and told what they thought of them. But we still went, we survived.
We still
and,
went, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, your crew all stayed fairly close after the war, didn't you? You all stayed in contact.
Yes, yeah, we visited. I never went out to Aussie, but was about 3 visiting down the families, and I had a granddaughter go out and visit you. And I kept in touch with them right to the end. I'm the last one standing, and I still keep in touch with 4 or 5 of the families today. In fact, I have a lovely photo, Squadron photo on the wall, which came all the way from Sydney, all modernised, with the makeup on and everything.
The colour, yes.
Not black and white.
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Yes. Oh, that's lovely. That's fantastic.
So I kept in touch, yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So when did you actually finish your tour, Tom?
Early March 45.
Oh, right. Okay. So very close to the end of the war. Then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
what were you still a lot of heavy losses,
Oh, I know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what did you do, sort of, for the last couple of months? Were you put on leave, or were you
I got
training?
I got about 6 weeks indefinite leave, and then I was posted up to Rossymouth, which was a pre-French training unit on Wimpy's. I was there as a flight engineer instructor, or they didn't have flight engineers on them. That was more scary because with them being French and trying to control English or Scots throughout the meeting, and it was often confusion between the lingo, and it was wanted to, that's the accent happened coming into land. I don't think anything fatalities, but it's a film. I think it was due to the language problem, honestly, but and then I was sent out to Egypt after the war.
Egypt, right? Mm-hmm.
Egypt, yeah. Just did a course and went out there, and then we was oldest son, who was 7 months old at the time, was seriously ill. And I just got this email from my wife with a photograph when he was 6 months old. And the current story short, he had bronchial pneumonia, which was a killer. And I applied for compassionate leave. But when I went to see the Safa in Cairo, we told me to go back to my village, went back, and then 2 or 3 days later, I was told to get packing, and they flew me home on compassionate posting. And it was dangerously ill. In fact, it was given up twice when we met there. The sister says, Mr. Davidson, don't hold out hope for your little boy. He's very ill. But he survived. He's 79 this year.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
And
gosh.
So I came home and I was posted near home, RAF Museum.
Yes, just up the road, yes.
Yeah.
And what did you do after the war? Did you go back into industry, Tom, after the war?
I went into industry and I got various jobs in industry. In the last nearly 30 years, I finished as a college lecturer on engineering, further education, Mm-hmm. I did, wonderful 70 years married, wonderful family. They love each other, they drive them as much as their mum and dad loved them. And be nice to people, kind to people, help them if you can. I've had a wonderful life, really.
That's a great philosophy, Tom. Absolutely great.
Yeah. And I'm in this care home now, which is absolutely fantastic. I don't know how they put up with me, but they do.
I bet you keep them on their toes. Oh, it's just along the road, is it? Great. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Brilliant. Have you got any more questions, James, for Tom? Anything else you would like to ask?
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued. Your thoughts on the memory of Bomber Command in films and television and books.
I've always had a good memory, Jim, and I can recollect. I don't wear me ox, I never have done, but it's there. It's generally about remembrance time because near my brother's anniversary, it generally gets me emotional then, But other than that, I never told him. I'm saying I never thought about it, just when I'm off where I give talks. But it was Johnson here who started me up.
Yeah. So
I never
you
used to
didn't
talk
talk
about it
about
about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I can say you didn't talk about things for a very, very long time, didn't you not?
I know, I quite agree. That's why I used to give a lot of talks. Must never forget.
Mm-hmm.
And the sacrifice made by men and women, boys, merchant navy, the armed forces,
Yeah.
It was worth fighting for. We weren't prepared to lay down our lives, for the freedom of the country.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah.
And we went to heroes, just, it was a job to do. That's what you thought. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Tom. That's been absolutely fantastic. Really, really interesting and also very, very moving as well. So thank you so much for sharing those details with us.
Well, thank you for listening. I hope it does go well, because we must never... The staff here, they put up Lest We Forget on Remembrance Day outside my room. They won't take it down. I said, people think I'm kidding. No, Tom, it's staying there. It's been there ever since.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Fantastic.
Friday morning.
No, absolutely. It's been fantastic. No. We've loved every minute of it, haven't we, James? Absolutely loved every minute.
I was the other day on Wednesday with my daughter on her way from Donkey Park to Sheen.
All right. You'll have to pop in for a cup of coffee one day if you're passing. Oh, honestly, you should. That would be absolutely lovely. We'd love to see you.
Oh, down every Wednesday. Anyway, beside the point.
Yeah, anyway, beside the point.
Right. Only some days I do rub it on and I realise that's what they were. So be it.
We don't mind. We love that. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So, massive thanks to Tom for coming on. Absolutely fascinating stuff. We'd like to thank everyone who has supported Never Mind the Dam Busters by becoming a paid subscriber. From just $3 a month, £2.40-ish, I think it works out as. You can support the pod and gain early access to episodes, copies of show transcripts, and the opportunity to be part of the audience when we record. Go to a Buzzsprout, Never Mind the Dam Busters, and sign up. A massive thank you to everybody who listens, and yeah.
Thanks, everyone. The next time we're going to be exploring what it took to get a bomber raid actually off the ground, all the preparations and all the unseen work before the aircraft's wheels actually lifted off. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.